the house a lot, ranging from church to neighborhood activities to marching band and etc. And so I stay a pretty busy person. But World Inhumanities and Genocide, that's such a delicate topic because so many lives were lost that you really have to tread lightly when talking about something where millions and millions of people died, and it's hard to execute. And so I'm wanting to execute it, but I believe that I can. I believe that I can. I won't be able to say I understand why that happened because none of us truly understand, but I can tell you what happened and I can give you timelines and etc. And so I want to get a bit into a word inhumanities and the difference between word inhumanities and genocide. Word inhumanities are just those cruel acts made by civilians that isn't genocide. Like genocide is a mass killing of a race and the purpose is to get rid of that race.
Eliminate that race.
For example, the Holocaust. Hitler wanted to get rid of Jewish people. The difference between a word inhumanity and genocide, say slavery would be word inhumanity. They didn't necessarily want to kill us off, they wanted to work us and put us to use. And so they weren't killing off African Americans but forcing them to do hard labor, which sadly means that it's not genocide, even though it's still as bad as genocide. And so that's the difference between that. So if you hear me talking about slavery and you're like, oh, why didn't she include that as genocide? It's not technically genocide. It's a cruel act of civilization. It's one of the worst things to happen in U.S. history, but it's not genocide. And so another good example of the difference between world inhumanity and genocide would be, say, genocide, the Rwandan genocide. Genocide. And word inhumanity, the Orlando shooting at the gay club that just happened. Now, that might be genocide. We don't know yet because people are thinking that it's either an attack on U.S. soil or that the shooter was trying to rid the world of gay people. So it's just conflicting. So we don't truly know at this point.
And so in a real sense, Alana, as we make preparations for our first commercial break here this morning, that this whole idea of world inhumanities, that is man inhumanity to man or woman's inhumanity to woman, that's not only important in terms of dealing with this whole issue of genocide, but I think we recognize that when we talk about genocide, we're talking about an attempt to bring a conclusion to something. And it's very rarely that we can assign the name genocide to many events, but I think that what you've done this morning is to come up with a number that you'd like to deal with in reference to it. And what we're going to do, we're going to take our first commercial break. And I think that basically that's what you want to do this morning. Is that the
that's what
area
I plan on
that
doing.
you want to do?
That's what
and
I
so
plan
what
on
we'll do is we'll take our first commercial break, and then we'll come back and we'll deal with world inhumanities and genocide. And I want you to know that I've seen you in terms of pulling all of this information together, and I'm encouraged by knowing that you've got that information available to us. And I think that you've always had it available when you got to this particular point. And so what we're going to do, we're going to take our first commercial break, then we'll come back for our 8-minute segment. And that 8-minute segment will give you an opportunity to elaborate further up on world inhumanities and deal with the issue of genocide. And of course, we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. Man's inhumanity to man.
Yeah.
Bullying or whatever and etc.
I'm thinking more wide.
Okay.
About her phone ring. Wide scale crap like Trail of Tears, stuff like that.
Okay, yeah. That's well, you go for it. Anything that you've got to deal with, and keep your legs still, and don't rock the chair.
Okay.
And then we'll come back and I'll introduce it. We got 7 minutes and 55 seconds. You see that clock there?
No, I don't see the clock.
I mean, you see it.
I mean, I see it now, but
yeah,
that's why I like have really bad time perception. Like either I'll talk over or
Yeah,
I'll
well, that's
stop.
the clock there. You see, too. You right. Oftentimes, it's down in 7 minutes and 55 seconds in this segment, and so when we come back, we're gonna have that time. And so you try to divide your time and articulate it, and don't shake the camera, chair, or twist your legs or anything. Just keep still.
I know.
You know how to do it. You've done it enough. You know. But as soon as he gives me the signal, we're going to start back, and I'll welcome them back. And you ready? Get ready. Give me the signal. Thank you and welcome back to the second segment of the show for today. The topic is World Inhumanities and Genocide, and we're talking to Alana McLaughlin, who has already given us information in reference to her background, education, and some of her experiences. And so, Alana, let's pick up where we left off by having you to talk about some of the things that you consider to be world inhumanities. That is, throughout all of the world, how people have reacted in reference to their fellow man. And then we'll get into some of the more delicate issues in dealing with genocide, an attempt to try to eradicate a race. But first, let's deal with simple world inhumanities.
Well, if you're just tuning in the first segment, I mentioned what the difference between a world inhumanity and genocide was. Genocide is killing off a race with the purpose being to eradicate the world of that race. And a world inhumanity is not necessarily to rid the world of that race, but to cause that race pain or suffering. For instance, a world inhumanity would be slavery. They didn't try to kill us all off, but they wanted to work us and punish us and etc. But they weren't just going around killing off African Americans. An example of genocide would be the Rwandan genocide, which I will talk about in the next segment, which was the Tutsis and the Hutus in Rwanda. Another example of a world inhumanity would be the shooting at the gay club in Orlando earlier this week. Now, this might end up being genocide, though, because we don't know necessarily what the shooter's motive was. Like his father was saying that he was trying to get rid of gay people, while U.S. government is saying that it was an attack on the U.S. So no stories are very solid, but I guess since it's a new story and it's still developing, in the coming days we'll probably have an answer as to whether it was world inhumanity or genocide. But for right now, I'm going to count that as world inhumanity. Like a man just wanted to go and kill people and make people suffer. A big world inhumanity that a lot of people in the U.S. are familiar with, and especially Tennesseans, is the Trail of Tears. If you're unfamiliar with the Trail of Tears, it is when Andrew Jackson sent Native Americans west of the Mississippi River to be able to take their land. And he did this during the winter where conditions were harsh and they were on foot. They were not sent off with food and drink and clothing at that. They were just one with nature, and that's not good in the winter, and especially if you're walking. And so they had to walk miles and miles and miles, and this was labeled the Trail of Tears. And I don't think I have to go into explaining why it was called the Trail of Tears, because I think there would be plenty of tears if you had to walk and walk and walk miles with barely anything, no food, watching people all around you die, your family die, if you don't die first, and things like that. So that's a big example of world inhumanity. Now, Andrew Jackson wasn't necessarily trying to kill off the Native Americans. Like I said, he was trying to get their land, but he knew that it would cause them great suffering, but he wasn't just sitting there ordering people to just take out every Native American they saw. That would make this be genocide. But since he did not do that, this is just world inhumanity. Another big example, Columbine, was world inhumanity. Say that the two shooters at the school weren't trying to rid the world of their students, of their classmates. They were trying to simply hurt them or kill them. And so that makes that a word in humanity, and it's a word in humanity because it was so widespread and it got so much media coverage. Another one, 9/11. Terrorists weren't trying to rid the world of white people. They were trying to wreak havoc in the U.S., and they unfortunately did. This is another thing that I wish could be counted as genocide but we never know because the bombers or whatever, we don't know if they were, what their motives really were. We know that it was an attack on U.S. soil. And so those are examples of word inhumanities, and it's as bad as genocide. It's just that there's a thin line between I want to cause you suffering and I want to get rid of you. Like, I can argue and bicker with you, but I don't want you to leave. Like,
You know,
like
Lana,
that.
I take in dealing with world inhumanities, I think one of the most important areas here that you mentioned to me earlier has to deal with war. Now, when you consider war in reality is man's inhumanity to man. Would you concede that? And by conceding that, then you can simply look at the various kinds of wars that we've become involved in. And even on a more personal level, I think that when you talk about inhumanity toward man, you can look at some of the things that happen in your everyday life, dealing with children, bullying, and all of those things. All of those things, while certainly they're not as significant in terms of their outcomes, they are important in terms of individuals who've been talked about, who've been bullied, who've been pushed around, and et cetera. And so I would imagine that you would include such activities as man's inhumanity to man, or people's unloving attitude toward people. Would that make sense in terms of what you're trying to deal with here?
I think that's the most bullying, childhood bullying at that, is one of the most common forms of inhumanities. You may not think it because it's not very harsh. I mean, a kid pushes you around, calls you names, like, what's that gonna do? That has long-term effects. Like, that kid that you pushed off of a slide could grow up to want to be a mass murderer. Why? Because he has so much hatred in his heart, etc. Things that just build up over time from people like you who picked at him. And so that's another big word in humanity. And I feel like if parents taught their children not to mess with other people's kids and not to mess with other people, just be about your business. Just stay in your little circle of life and let other people be in their little bubble, and we all can just live happily in this nice little earth. But people don't want to do that, especially children. And I know it's a part of being a child. No, being a terrible person is not a part of being a child. Why? Because that's not, well, it wasn't a part of my childhood, at least. I grew up with parents who were like, leave other people alone. Do your work and let other people, if they want to have purple hair and red eyes, let them do that. That doesn't affect you. That doesn't hurt you. So leave other people alone. And I grew up leaving other people alone. And that's helped me in the long run because it's helped mature me at a young age, and so that I can see inhumanities going on, and I can tell my friends, hey, you look stupid messing with other people, so just stay in your lane.
Okay, so Alana, I think as we come to the end of this second segment, I think we can not only make preparations for this final commercial break, but we can say that when we come back, we'll deal more with the genocide part in reference to what we're doing. And we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. You got to speak on up.
I mean, I can't keep.
All the little funny little.
Okay, but I didn't expect to be talking about children.
Huh?
I wasn't.
Well, I'm trying to get you to talk.
Why would I?
Well, you ready to talk about genocide?
Yes.
Okay, listen, you're doing well, but I just want you to be more forceful. You're doing well. This is genocide. You ready to deal with genocide?
Yes.
Okay, here we go. It's 10 minutes.
Okay.
Give me some study you studied about on this reference to this. You doing right. You doing all right. I just want to feel star performance. That's what this is all about. This is about stardom. Yeah. You ready? Yes. Look up. Here it comes. Get ready. We got 9 minutes and 50 seconds. Now you ready to knock it out here. Knock it out the ballpark. That's what you got to do now. There we go. 30 out. Wake up, wake up. The camera's on you now. Thank you and welcome back to the final segment of the show for today. We're talking to Alana McLaughlin, and she's giving us some information in reference to world inhumanities and genocide. And of course, Alana, let us doing this final segment think in terms of genocide. I think that you have information in reference to that, and I think that in order to deal with inhumanities, we're talking about something that is terminal, which is to say there's one thing to fight one another and to have wars and etc. But genocide is a little different because the purpose of genocide is what? The complete eradication, I think, as you've mentioned, of a race. Let's talk about it from that perspective. Let's deal with genocide at this particular time.
Well, if you're just tuning in previous segments, I talked about what the difference between world inhumanities and genocide was. Genocide, like you said, is the eradication of an entire race by mass killing. For instance, the Rwandan genocide. If you're unfamiliar with the Rwandan genocide genocide was when the Hutu government in Rwanda wanted to kill off the Tutsis and ended up killing from 100,000 to about 1 million Tutsis. And there's a whole movie about it, which is Hotel Rwanda, which was a very popular movie, and that's how I found out about it. The biggest core difference between genocide and world inhumanities is basically perception, because not all the times that bad things happen can you actually ask the perpetrator, hey, why'd you do this? So if it looks like genocide, we're going to classify it as genocide, and if it doesn't, then it's just a world inhumanity. And I don't want to say just to kind of make it seem smaller than it is. It's still a great issue in the United States, and world inhumanities are way more frequent than genocide. Like I mentioned in the last segment, bullying is a world inhumanity, and you may not think it is because it's not great scale or all that, but it still is because it's teasing, taunting one another, hurting each other, and that's a world inhumanity. Another very famous form of genocide was in April 1992 in Bosnia, the Bosniak and Croatian genocide, where the Yugoslav army and Bosnian forces started to kill Bosniaks, which were Bosnian Muslims, and Croatian civilians. They killed about 100,000 of them, making it, and at the time, it was the worst genocide since the Holocaust at the time. And so that's another very popular form of genocide, but I think that the most popular form and one of the worst in the world was the Holocaust. If you're unfamiliar with the Holocaust, this is when Adolf Hitler, Nazi party leader, came to power in Europe and Germany and etc. And he ruled over all these places, and he decided to kill off Jewish people. Now, what a lot of people fail to realize is that he did not only kill Jewish people. Most people just say that he killed off Jewish people because that's who he killed off the most of. That was the main target, you know? Say if you're hunting and you want a deer, but you see rabbits and etc., you're going to kill those as well. But the main target was Jewish people. He also killed gypsies and drifters, and African Americans, lots of orphans, gay people. He killed anyone who wasn't his image of a perfect civilian, which was a blonde-haired, blue-eyed person with light skin. And so if you weren't Adolf Hitler's image of beauty, you were sent to concentration camps, you were forced to do hard labor, you possibly could be killed on sight, you could be robbed, and all these horrible, horrible things. And I think the key question that you have to ask when dealing with genocide is why? Why did someone want to kill, why did the Hutu government want to kill all the Tutsis? Why did Adolf Hitler want to kill all the Jewish people? Why did the Yugoslav army and Bosnian forces want to kill off Bosniaks? It's all stemming from one key thing, which is hate. Hate breeds every evil thing in the world. If you talk about any word in humanity or genocide, look at the perpetrator and then think he had to have hated this group of people that he was targeting or whoever to be able to do something like this. Like the Trail of Tears. Andrew Jackson must have, I don't know if he hated them, and I can't really ask him now, but he had no sort of sympathetic feelings for the Native Americans, so he made them walk and he made them go out in the winter with no food and no clothing and etc. For the Holocaust, Adolf Hitler, now I can actually say, and he has been quoted as saying that he hated Jewish people, and that's why he did what he did, and it's not a justification by any means, but more of a reason why he did that. And so, I personally believe that a way that we can start to see a decrease in world inhumanities and genocides and killing is teach your children love before you teach them hate, and don't teach them hate at that. For instance, racism. Racism is not, you're not born racist, you're taught racism. In a lot of cases, a lot of 21st century racist teenagers and children were born into racist families. And so they see that growing up and they think that that's the right way to go, because your first role models are your parents and your family, and when you see them doing something, you're going to automatically assume that that's right. And when you hear otherwise, you want to fight with them because, no, my parents did it, those are my role models, and that's right. And so that's the key thing and a lot of this. And so many people would just say, oh, no, they're born to be da-da-da-da. That could have been changed by just simply teaching your children to love and be decent people.
Oh, so, and Lana, so in your age group, do you find that there are many people who reflect upon some of the things that we're talking about now, about how they ought to feel toward one another, to enjoy and obey the golden rules, do unto others as you would have? Do you find much sentiment like that, or is it almost, as you've indicated on so many occasions, some kind of controversy or some kind of bullying or some kind of pushing or whatever? Is there any movement towards sanity in reference to man's relationship to man that you see in your everyday life? And if not, what can you tell your peers as to how they might make things better for everybody?
Speaking about my age group, sanity is a taboo. It is common that you see people laughing at other people's failures, at other people's mishaps, and that's what's become of social media. You can get on any teenager's social media page, you'll find some video of like someone falling over or somebody like getting hit with a ball or something, and see a million people laughing about it. Like, people's mishaps are hilarious to people, and I've been falling victim to this sometimes. Like, I saw this video of this kid getting hit with a ball. But anyway, it's just being nice people is just, it's so rare. And sometimes it even astounds me, because I can laugh at, like, say a kid falling over. Like, if he doesn't get really injured, like, I can laugh at that. I can't laugh at someone getting hit by a car or falling off of bridges and stuff like that. And those are the types of videos that go viral, that people sit and laugh at for days and days and days. And I'm like, wow, when did we, like, I knew this generation was bad, and I knew that we were very selfish and not selfless, but I didn't know that it was that bad. And so I just, like I said earlier, I'm going to reiterate on that. Teach your children to be nice to one another, because it'll go a long way.
And so, Alana, over the last minute that we have here, let me thank you for coming by with that very, very important information, because I think it gave us an opportunity to hear a perspective from a person who has been involved with a number of things and who really know quite a bit about what is going on among your peers. And so I think that that's quite helpful to us, and it's also encouraging when we can find that there are persons who are willing to think in terms of the greater good, and they are willing to go out and preach. And I think that that's one of the things that people can say about you in reference to your appearance on this show, is that you often come as a good role model. And I've heard people say in many instances dealing with you in reference to that. And I want to thank you for that. And let me encourage our audience to tune in again next week for another informative edition of Comments. Thank you and good morning.